I feel like like the super wealthy people almost laugh at the race discussions because they're like, all right, good. As long as they're not talking about the fact that everyone is below us in wealth. As long as they're focused on other issues like race or sexism or the different phobias, like as long as they're not talking about money, we don't give a shit. But as soon as they start to come after, like maybe people should be closer together, maybe we should start to close the wealth gap, that's when the wealthy people step in and say like, let's stir the pot a little bit, let's get them riled up. What's up, guys? Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the podcast. Before we start, this is a quick announcement to let you guys know that I'm dropping bonus episodes on AUXORO Premium. For less than $5 per month when you sign up for the year, you get a 2-hour bonus episode every month of my show, The Aux, that covers exciting and sometimes twisted topics like MKUltra, the COVID lab leak hypothesis, Tim Dillon, Tom Cruise, the Tuskegee experiment, the obesity epidemic, and more. You also get monthly solo episodes with my takes on drugs, sex, money, creativity, mindfulness, and you have the ability to submit topic suggestions for both of my shows, The Aux and the AUXORO podcast. Expect 3 hours of new exclusive podcast content per month, including access to all archived episodes found nowhere else but AUXORO Premium. Visit auxoro.supercast.com to sign up today. This is the best deal in podcasting. 3 hours of exclusive podcast content to punch you in the motherfucking mouth every month for less than $5. No half-assed episodes here. Go to auxoro.supercast.com to join the premium gang today. So, I'm here today with my beautiful, sexy, smart girlfriend.
All the feels, all the compliments, yes.
Julie LeBeau, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me again and again.
Of course. I plan to have you again right after the podcast as well.
Good.
So, I wanted to have an Ask Reddit episode. I've been thinking about doing an Ask Reddit episode for a while. And by that, I mean, I surfed around a bunch of different Ask Reddits, like Ask Men, Ask Women, Ask Dating, looked for some different topics. We have one on the metaverse with Mark Zuckerberg. And so I thought it would be fun to have a more casual episode in the sense that we're not going to stick to one topic the entire time like other episodes from the Aux. We will get in and out of different areas and dive deep into those individual areas. So are you ready to join me?
I am ready.
Sweet decaf. Decaf is how you know you're addicted to coffee because it's not doing anything to me.
No.
Decaf is like the methadone of coffee. It's like you get a hit from it, from the drinking of the coffee, but you don't actually feel any of the caffeinated effects. It's like you want the feeling of it without the drug.
Yeah, having been I've consumed coffee from essentially birth, and even regular coffee doesn't really give me caffeinated effects anymore. So decaf coffee, it's the same thing for me.
Are you addicted to coffee?
Definitely.
You think you're legit addicted?
I don't know if I'm addicted to caffeine. I'm addicted to like the taste of coffee and the sensation. But I was actually thinking about tricking myself into drinking decaf instead to just lay off caffeine. And since I have anxiety as well, that's definitely something I've looked into doing. But I'm also very scared of withdrawal effects and just not being able to stay up to do my work. So I need to do that at a time in my life when I have nothing better to do but try to quit caffeine.
Yeah, it's never a good idea to quit an addiction when you're in the middle of something like a PhD. I feel like you have to, if you're going to be a good addict, you have to wait until you have some space in your life to quit that addiction. And I'm talking as someone who, I don't think I've ever been addicted to a substance. I'm definitely dependent on coffee.
Oh, yeah.
I looked up the definition a few weeks ago for another podcast of addiction versus dependence. And addiction was something that is actively destroying or harming your relationships, your personal life, your friendships, getting in the way of your work. But a dependence is a chemical that when removed has a noticeable effect on your mood. And so if I stop doing coffee, I've never missed a family function to like inject coffee into my veins.
No.
But if I stopped drinking coffee cold turkey, I would 100% feel some, I don't know, anxious or on edge
like
effects for a week, maybe less.
Yeah, it's like a good and a bad relationship. So when you get out of a toxic relationship, you're gonna get this addiction, and so you're like go really for withdrawal and stuff. Well, like when you're in a good relationship, you feel dependent. Like you're sad when you're not in it anymore. Like I'd be sad not to be drinking coffee. I'd miss coffee, but I wouldn't be like going into crazy descent into hell or anything. But and to add on that though, is addiction is also a medical condition. And I think that's also another difference between addiction and dependence.
What if that was hell? It was the same world as it is now, but there's only decaf coffee.
Is this like the medium place?
Yeah, the medium place. I actually have some questions planned from the Good Place. I went onto the Good Place Reddit. There's 200,000 members of the Good Place.
It's a great show.
It's a big show.
Maybe I'll join them.
So speaking of drinking substances and toxic relationships.
Oh, yes.
The first question I picked out, this is from the Ask Dating Reddit, is would you date someone who doesn't drink?
You know, I actually just thought about this question the other day. I can't remember why. I came across, maybe there was something on like TikTok or anything where there was this person who didn't drink. And I feel like that would be so awkward. I think that would depend on what stage and what relationship they have to alcohol. If it's like, you know, when your partner is on a diet and so you should not tempt them, that's hard. So I feel like if I was with someone that doesn't drink and is not comfortable with me drinking around them, that would definitely be very challenging. I probably would try, but I don't know if I would be successful. And then, you know, you have the aspect of going out to have a drink and just kind of like the awkwardness of the first date where it's like that person is not drinking and I'm drunk.
I don't think that someone who declares outright that they do not drink, and I'm not saying taking periods off from drinking, because I have taken months off from drinking and I plan to in the future to take periods off, maybe even years, who knows. But I think someone that declares that they drink, who tries to date someone who, or someone that declares that they don't drink, who tries to date someone who drinks, will just not work out. And it's not because of the substance. I think it's more because of the value system and the way you behave. Because when you're in a group of drunk people, one of the reasons why it's fun is because you're also drunk and you're also drinking, and it takes the edge off. And one of the least fulfilling experiences ever is being the sober one out in a drunk group. It's just not fun.
Again, you know, if you choose not to drink, and I mean, again, there's this difference as well in, are you not drinking because, you know, you just not interested, you just don't want it, or you don't like it? Or are you not drinking because you have an addictive problem that made you need to be sober? Because then that's again like a very different thing when you are with someone that's struggling daily with addiction, and you know, maybe that person has been sober for 10 years and they're doing great, etc. And I don't think I would never date someone based on their sole relationship with alcohol or even past addictions, because I think everyone deserves a chance regardless. But if you're like, let's say you just don't really like alcohol and you've been that way your entire life, you are probably used to going out with friends and being the sober one. So that's not necessarily something that would then bother you. But then would you be bothered to have your partner just be sober, I guess?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. So I'm not old enough and we're not really old enough yet to have alcoholic friends who abstain from alcohol, because typically that happens in 30s, 40s. There's not a lot of 20-year-olds that are declaring themselves alcoholic.
Here's the thing with all alcoholics is just that we've not been diagnosed with it yet.
Sure. Yeah, that I definitely would fit into the category of alcoholic if you just looked on the frequency of drinking earlier in life, especially in college, drinking four nights a week heavily for 4 years straight. And it was fun. I mean, it was fun because my body could handle it. And I was much better at recovering from hangovers. But in my experience, everyone I've met who chooses not to drink for moral reasons, I'm not talking about someone who was an alcoholic and is now clean. Mm-hmm. It's someone who chooses to drink, or someone who chooses not to drink for moral reasons, is always boring. That has been my experience meeting people that choose not to drink. And I'm not talking about taking periods off from drinking. I have very fun friends and I've met very fun people who will say, hey, I'm not having a drink tonight, and they're just not drinking for the year, or maybe they're taking a month off from drinking. They're being sober for however much period of time just to kind of reset their relationship with alcohol. But people who tend to not drink for moral reasons are, in my experience, very judgmental, not fun, just have a boring, blasé attitude. They make you feel bad for having fun. And I've met one person in my life who, he's one of the most fun people I've ever been around. I played baseball with him at Richmond, and he did not drink alcohol. And I believe, I've never actually had a conversation with him, but I believe it was because he had a family history of alcoholism, and he was avoiding even testing the waters with that. He didn't want to drink because he knew his family history. He may have even had a relative that passed away from alcohol-related death, and as a result, he didn't drink. But I never felt like he judged anyone for drinking. If you saw him out, you would have thought he was also drinking, just because that's how fun he was. Yeah. And so for that, and I don't consider that a moral reason not to drink. I consider that I'm preventing a future problem because of my genetics. Yeah. I think people who are just like, I don't drink, and there's no family history, they're not former alcoholics. A lot of those people I've just gotten I'm better than you vibes, or they're not fun, or they're punishing themselves in some way. Because a lot of times when I've abstained from alcohol, I become less fun. And maybe that's probably a problem with me, that I associate alcohol with fun, but I've pushed away drinks at times in my life, and I'm not sure why I did it, other than the fact that I just wanted to be someone who wasn't drinking. I don't think that drink would have destroyed me that night. I'm like, why didn't I just have a drink? Why didn't I just have fun? Why didn't I just give into it? I don't have any family history. I'm not an alcoholic. This having 2 beers on a Thursday is not going to kill me. It would probably enhance my experience to be able to have a more free-flowing, exciting conversation. And that's been how I've felt.
I feel that maybe because we are in this transitional period between like binge drinking and having social drinks and just not drinking to get wasted, being in our late 20s, it's just kind of a weird time, because in our early 20s, fun was associated with alcohol. Alcohol is associated with partying, going to bars, meeting people, being disinhibited, and just kind of like very talkative and relaxed and fun. And alcohol makes most people fun. Like, they make some people angry and whatnot, but most people, they just get a little more loosey-goosey and they're a good time. And it's generally during parties, etc. And now that, I think especially with the pandemic, where things have really slowed down and we don't, like, we're starting back up a bit, but most of the interactions that we've had, most of the social interactions we've had during the pandemic were like in small groups and maybe staying at home a lot. And so maybe just having, one glass of wine, a couple beers, and not necessarily getting to that drunk fun state, and way less regularly as well. So we kind of like are learning to be your own person without needing alcohol to talk to people and whatnot.
How funny would it be if I'm sitting here talking about how I've had a good relationship with alcohol, and this is just straight whiskey filled to the brim in this cup at 3:00 in the afternoon.
We'll have to check in 10 years.
Yeah, no, I've never had a problem with alcohol in my life.
Yeah, me neither. This is not straight vodka at all.
I've always had a healthy relationship with alcohol, which is why I wait until at least 11 a.m. to crack the first bottle of whiskey. But no, I feel like part of becoming an adult is reconciling and enhancing your relationship with alcohol. It becomes a tool to black out when you are in college.
Yeah.
And you don't really have, when you're in college, you don't have you have a heavy foot with alcohol. It's like you're driving and you just know how to step on the gas or press the brake. There's no in between. You can't just sit in the middle lane. You always have to be flooring at 95 in the left or be going 40 miles an hour in the right when you're hungover, so that 3 hours later you can start flooring it again. But when you become older, you learn to use alcohol to enhance your experiences as an adult. And I've started to recognize that I don't enjoy the feeling of getting drunk as much as I used to. I don't know if I ever enjoyed the feeling of being belligerent, at least just being drunk when other stimulants haven't been involved. But I enjoy a nice light 2 to 3 drink buzz over the course of a couple hours and staying at that level. And that is actually the best experience for me now, because I have some sort of forward thought of I don't want to wake up like a zombie 6:30 a.m. tomorrow. I want to have a good day tomorrow. Whereas I wasn't even thinking about that as a 19-year-old. I'm just like, my body's going to bounce back. And I mean, that could also just be me. Yeah. Adulting really is learning how to drink. That is an underrated skill as an adult, is learning how to drink well, and not making fancy drinks or knowing about the ins and outs of specific alcohols, but just like knowing how to pace yourself, knowing when to peak, and knowing when it's time to put down that last drink.
Yeah. Like, going back to that transitional thing, it's weird because I feel like I'm at that point where I definitely enjoy more having a couple drinks with a couple friends and being back home by midnight, 1 tops or something. But I do sometimes long for the days where I was like partying intensely and having a great time. And it was great in my early 20s, and I definitely would not be able to do it today. But I feel like I'm in kind of this in between where I wish I could be 20 again, and I don't at the same time. You know what I mean?
What's the most embarrassing drunk moment you've had in your early 20s? Something that you thought was an amazing idea at the time, and it was almost like that drunk text moment where you woke up the next day and can't believe you sent that message, or you can't believe you said that or did that thing.
I mean, I definitely had a bunch of moments like this. I think there was a couple of times where I remember thinking I was sober, or like, I mean, I knew I was drunk, but didn't think I was that drunk, and got kicked out of bars without even really realizing I was getting kicked out, and just kind of like being outside. And I remember.
So you would go to bars to get kicked out. That was your drug.
Yeah, I was like, get drunk.
That was your hit. That was your hit. You would say, I need a hit of adrenaline. let me slap this bouncer in the face and get kicked out of this pub right here.
No, but I remember there was this one time. I wish I had something juicier for you. Maybe I'll come back to me and then I can say it to you. But I remember there was one time. So I did my undergrad in the UK, as you know, and in the UK, the dress code to party is mini dresses or underwear with really tall high heels. And I didn't really wear stilettos or high heels at the time. And
the code to dress was underwear?
Well, I'm exaggerating, but it's like very, very sexy. They're like freezing to death.
There's short shorts
like
as you can
super
get.
Super short
skirts.
short skirts, like very bodycon dresses and tall heels. The first time I went clubbing in the UK, actually, I was wearing...
Seals. Clubbing seals, yeah.
I was wearing... a collar. Wait, how you call like a rolled? What Steve Jobs had.
Turtleneck.
Yeah, so I had like a turtleneck shirt, like trousers, like long pants and boots, but not sexy boots, like just like horse riding boots, and I felt so out of place.
So you were like Elizabeth Holmes on top, and stripper on the bottom.
No, I was like literally like wearing what I was wearing during the day, because in France when you go clubbing you don't wear anything special. Okay. But then after that I upped my dresser and just got a bunch of more fitted clothes for the environment. And this one time I was wasted, didn't think I was, and I got kicked out of the club, and I was carrying my heels in my hands because I was just in pain and drunk. And I was like debating with the bouncer that he should let me back in, that I wasn't drunk, and I like put my shoes back in and kind of like walked around to show him I wasn't drunk, and it was just my shoes that were hurting. But yeah, it was because
so the
I was
bouncer
drunk.
thought you were drunk because you took your shoes off?
That's what I thought. The bouncer kicked me out because I was drunk, but in my head it was like, oh, that's just because I was barefoot. So if I show him I can walk in heels, that'd be good.
So he threw you out because you were acting drunk, and then you came back to the bouncer and were trying to walk in a straight line for him in high heels, yes. And say, no.
They were like a size too small for my feet as well. I don't know why the fuck I put myself through this.
That's like if you get pulled over by the cops and he doesn't even need to see you walk in the straight line. He just knows you're belligerently fucked up.
Yeah.
And you volunteer to the cop, wait, no, let me really show you how fucked up I am. And then you try to walk in a straight line and you trip over yourself and your face smacks into the concrete. And he's like, now I'm giving you 3 DUIs. You were only going to get 1, but I did not realize how drunk and intoxicated you actually were. So thank you for that display.
Yeah. What's your drunk story?
My drunk story? There's a lot. I would say, since we're talking about getting kicked out of bars, on my 21st birthday, we went to a bar called Southern Railway that I'd went to many times with a fake ID. And this is a completely separate time, but after my 21st birthday, this is like, I'm 21 and a half. One of the bouncers that used to card me at Southern Railway thought I had a different name. I think like the name on my fake ID was Kevin or something. And so I gave him my real ID when I was 21 and a half. And he was like, this is not you, because we had been there so many times. And he was looking at me weird. And I was like, yeah, dude, sorry, like that. I'm Zach.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi. I'm sorry to have been lying to you, to your face all these years. And
oh my gosh.
And so he wrote the song "Trust Issues." He was actually Drake. That he was working at a bouncer. Drake was working as a bouncer, and then I tricked him with my ID, and then he went on to write the song "Trust Issues." Trust issues.
That makes sense.
That's not how it goes. But so back to the original story. I went to Southern Railway, and the bouncer told me that I had to wait until midnight to get in. It was my 21st birthday, so I was using my real ID. So we saw October 26th. It was probably 11:40, and we get there, and he says, "Happy birthday. please wait outside. So all my friends are 21. I was young. They had all turned 21 already. I was waiting outside and I was pissed. So the bouncer, there was a line at Southern Railway, and then you took a right into the door, and he was checking IDs under that overhang. And he wasn't paying attention to me. And I was meeting people where they were still outside before they took the right into the overhang to get into Southern Railway. And I was checking people's IDs and letting him in as if I was also a bouncer. I don't know why I started doing this, but I started a second line. Literally a second line broke off. People went up to me. I was taking people's IDs, pretending to look at it. I was bending this one woman's ID who was probably like 38 in the light, just kind of like looking at it because I thought I was being hilarious, and gave it back to her. And eventually the bouncer kept asking people why they were walking past him when he was right there, and they probably said something like, "Oh, that guy checked our IDs," and he turns around and sees me holding people's IDs and saying, "You're good," and he came over to me and said, "If you keep doing this, you're not going to get in." Nothing happened to me, but I just vividly remember being so blacked out. I probably had a good dozen drinks in my system by then, because this is my 21st.
Yeah.
Everyone was buying me shots at the bar before, and ended up going to Southern Railway. Don't remember anything after the first 30 minutes in there. And now I'm gay. Yeah. So that's it.
So I'm going to go pack my stuff then.
Yeah, no, I just realized I'm straight for you, but I'm gay for everyone else.
Aww.
So you can stay.
Cute.
Yeah.
That's not how sexuality works, I guess, but cool.
I think you can be a spectrum. I think you can be partially gay. I think everyone has a percentage.
Are you not partially bi?
I don't know. I think
it's just a name for it.
Not a lot of things in life are absolutes. So I don't think anyone is 100% straight or 100% gay. I think there are a lot of people like myself who are straight. I would say I'm probably like 98% straight.
Yeah.
And then I don't even allow myself to explore the other 2%. I think I could be, I would be a pretty solid gay dude. I feel like I could hold it down pretty well if I ever tried to experiment. But it's like I feel like a lot of guys. Maybe you're gonna
turn out like this Australian boxer and just like one day get a finger up your bum and then be like, oh, turns out I like dudes.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't right now. I can't. I've never felt a sexual feeling with a guy.
Have you ever met out with a guy?
No, that's a girl thing. Only girls experiment in college.
Yeah.
No guys ever just
Why
make
do you
out.
think we're so comfortable with our sexuality later in life? That's because we experimented in college.
But I've never felt the desire to. That's the thing.
I don't know if I felt the desire, but I was like, I wonder what that feels like. And then be like,
So it was more, you didn't feel a deep desire to do it. You just wanted to explore to see if you were almost kind of like with a metal detector, seeing if it hit you. Like you were like, ding, 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 or no.
I mean, I feel like I might have felt attraction for some girls. These girls I did not make out with, or like I didn't try to kiss or anything happened. So I don't know if I would feel differently if I kissed someone I liked when he was a girl. Like with guys, I feel like, especially when I was younger, I didn't need to feel like an extra something. Like I feel like it takes me a lot more to be interested in a sexual way to a girl. But I feel like in college, there was a mix of, drunkenness, peer pressure, and just curiosity. And so, I don't know. Maybe if I kissed a girl I liked, I would feel differently.
So you think it's more of the person and less of the sexuality?
Yeah.
It's not that for guys at all. It's the sex
well, for
first,
you, maybe
and then the person later.
Don't talk about on behalf of every guys. Especially you're talking about cis male here.
Sure, but for guys on average,
straight male.
I have never met a guy who would keep showing interest in a girl he wasn't attracted to because he thought she was a good person. Those girls become friends.
No, there's a
I
mix.
have friends. I'm friends with girls that are attractive. I'm friends with girls that are not attractive, but I would never pursue a girl sexually if I wasn't attracted to her first. I don't know any guys that do that.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's what I meant as well when I said if I liked a girl, not just like I don't feel like making out with every single one of my girlfriends. That's not what I mean. The fact that I like their personality means I want to be their friends. And it's the same with a guy. If I'm interested in their personality but do not feel attractiveness to them, and they could be really hot, but if I don't feel attracted to them, I'm not going to do anything about it. When I say like I have felt with some girls, like few, but some form of like attraction and so I liked their personality and I felt attracted to them physically as well.
And you want to bring them into the bedroom with us, is what you're saying. Okay. Now I'm listening. I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm willing to have a threesome if that's what makes you happy. Because happy wife, happy life. I would be willing to have a threesome.
I didn't say I want you to be involved though.
Then I have a
I'll
spacious.
watch.
I'll watch. I'll record. How about this? I'll record a live podcast.
Oh yes,
and I'll throw it up,
and you can comment,
and I'll be like a commentator. I don't know if anyone's ever done a live sex commentation. I think porn should have more commentators, like a guy that's hitting it well from the back. And some guy's like, yeah, like this dude's really getting it right now. He's really getting in there. And the guy hears that from the announcer. And so he's like, oh, yeah, I am getting it in there. Or like the girl, same thing. There's like another girl that's like, wow, like she is really taking that whole thing right now. Like her gag reflex must be non-existent. And she hears that in her head. And she's like, oh, yeah, like I am getting in there right now. And yeah, porn commentary.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be a new industry.
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
Well, speaking of sex, I found
You laid out those topics perfectly, it seems. Like you knew where the conversation was going to go.
I did one podcast before, so I am slightly experienced. So this is still up there. Or else I wouldn't have been able to find it. So there is a post on Ask Reddit Sex. Mm-hmm. And this is about a 40-year-old couple that rediscovers the best sex of their lives. And so I thought it could be good to go through for the future. You know, if this works out, we'll be, getting nasty in the 30s and 40s. So maybe we could re-listen to this episode as an inspirational trip back.
Yeah.
All right. So this is what the post says. So it's titled 40 male female, so 40 years old each, male female relationship. This is how my wife and I, with 2 jobs, 3 kids, and after 16 years of marriage, found the best sex of our lives. My wife and I are 40 years old and have 3 kids under 11. We've been married for 16 years and recently made a break into the absolute best sex of our lives. A month ago, we went on a trip to Mexico with friends, and of course, the sex there was amazing, but for the last month since we've been home, it's gotten even better than it was on our trip. Many days doing it 3 to 5 times a day. Other days, we've intentionally taken a break to let our bodies rest, but then we pick it right back up. Our sex has always been a struggle since all of our dating and engagement happened under a Christian purity culture. We're now realizing how much that has negatively affected us. Shame around self-pleasure, feeling embarrassed saying certain words or having certain conversations, feeling guilty for not pleasing each other enough, etc. That plus the nonstop stress of a 2-job, 3-kid household made sex at best a monthly affair, mostly for the last 8 years or so. What has helped us break through? Several factors. So we'll get into the factors, but right off the bat, if you're having trouble with your relationship, take a trip down to Mexico.
Yeah.
It seems to be the move.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So the first one, or the first factor that they say is sexting. So they say not strict sexting, but while we're at work, we're sending each other messages about the night before, just talking about it, what we liked, what felt good, and what we want to try. Doing this digitally has helped us overcome previous feelings of shame and embarrassment and allowed us to really open our vocabulary, which is really very hot.
Wait. Let me stop you right there. There's like a comic, I think, that brought this up, which is like sending nudes to your wife or husband, which is like a terrible idea because you send a lot of important information like codes or grocery lists and stuff to your spouse, and then you like scroll through and like, oops, there's nude and stuff. So I feel like that's
I don't agree with that because maybe our text conversations would change if we were married and have more things about kids and passwords.
Yeah.
But it's not like I go through my relationship texts and it's all important information. A lot of it is no longer relevant information about meeting up somewhere or getting groceries or checking in. I think a nude wouldn't disrupt. If anything, it would add to the flow of a relationship because you're so used to the monotony of, hi, how are you? Good. Can you pick the kids up from school? Sure. What time are we eating dinner tonight? So if you just sent in a random dude with the what time are we eating dinner tonight and you just did a picture in the mirror, that breaks you out of the autopilot of texting and as a result, the autopilot of life. And so I think you see your partner naked, so it's nothing new. But I think the great thing about nudes is that it breaks you out of the autopilot response of text. And then once you're out of the autopilot response of text, then you give a creative response. Whereas if you're going to respond more creatively if you get a text that says, what time is dinner tonight, with a nude from me, if I'm just like turning around in the mirror, showing my whole butt and back, flexing the right calf a little bit, left one's a little small, you'll send a more creative text if you get a nude from me saying, what time is dinner tonight, than if I just say to you, what time is dinner tonight?
Yeah.
It'll kind of rock you out of your autopilot text mode. And same thing for me. If I got a nude from you sending me a text, I would be like, all right, time to fire up a good response here.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So
that's factor one.
That's factor one. Sexting. How do you feel about sexting?
I don't know. I mean, it's not. I've never really like practiced it like intensely, but I don't know. It's not really something that.
Well, you don't have to practice it. You can just do it.
No, but I mean, just in the sense that it's not like I have a lot of experience doing it, but it's not. I mean, sometimes like a little flirty text is nice, but I don't know if I'd be really into like hardcore. What am I gonna do to you tonight? Blah blah blah. I don't know, but that also could be the fact that, I don't feel like I need those extra things to feel like that.
So you don't need the extra text. You don't need the extra sex to feel sexier.
Yeah, at least I've not. I mean, I will feel so much more turned on by compliments. I think that. Well, I guess it depends. I think it might depend on how you sext, and I think everyone does it differently.
Yeah, like if you're texting with a creepy guy or a girl that doesn't know how to sext, then it turns you off. It turns you off to sexting because you think that, and even as a guy, if you're sexting, you already think about the text that you're gonna send regardless, especially earlier on in a relationship. So with the sext, you're really trying to nail it. So I think in order for a good sexual exchange, if you will, to happen, both people have to be open and non-judgmental and be willing to fire sex back and forth and think creatively and kind of just go with the flow and not give in to this is the weird feeling, which
Well,
oftentimes happens, but just be like, all right, we're not together right now, but we're going to talk dirty to each other during sex, or like tell someone what we're going to do to them.
I mean, I think it's also a big thing in communication, like in the sense of what I meant. So sure, you could have people that are like bad at it or anything, but the main thing I think is that you need to communicate what turns you on and what turns you off. And that applies in the bedroom as well, where some people like, actual dirty talk, some like insults, and they might want that through text, while other people will be completely thrown off by that. Some people like to kind of create a fantasy. Like, remember that in the last season of Sex Education, there's Vivian's boyfriend who's really into like old timey-wimey, like pretending to be a knight and like that wasn't doing it for her, so they like found common ground. And so I think it's a lot about that. It's like sexting is fine as long as you're clear with your partner on what actually turns you on versus not. And I know that personally, like kind of like insulty or too porno like maybe text might turn me off. But
what is a porno like text?
I don't know.
You don't see a lot
I'm
of
gonna
texting
ride
in porno.
you like a dog. I don't know.
Yeah, because that would hurt. Have you ever seen a dog get ridden before?
No, and I don't want to. Have you?
Maybe by a monkey on YouTube, like a dog, like something. Things don't ride dogs.
Oh, yes.
Like, I'm gonna ride you like a dog.
I
Dogs
don't
don't ride.
know.
Dogs do it doggy style.
I don't know.
I think that if you, I don't know, if you're gonna sext, it has to be straightforward. You can't beat around the bush, no pun intended. You have to just go for it and see if the other person is picking up what you're putting down, and then if not, you can abandon it. But you can send a text, and especially if you're in a relationship with someone, that text is not the end of the world if they aren't into it. You're gonna have text exchanges for a lot of things. So if you fire off a text with confidence and they're not into it, then it's like, well, whatever. You tried something at least. A lot, because a lot of people, I feel like what they may have felt like us. They're 40 right now, and they may have felt like us or similar to us when they were in their 20s, and then gradually kept having less and less time, fell into more and more autopilot of the day, like what we were talking about, picking up the kids, going to work, coming home, fall asleep. You fall into that pattern, and it's very hard to break that pattern. So maybe both of them were against sexting, especially since they noticed that they had the Christian upbringing, but then one of them just fired off a sext out of nowhere, and maybe she did it, and the guy was like, Jesus, like, and he was like, where's this been? Yeah. She was on the cross,
Jesus.
like, Jesus.
All right.
Yeah. Jesus, save me. Oh, Lord. But yeah, and then maybe he was thinking, where's this been for the past 10 years? I'm going with this. And it's something that he would have never done if she didn't do it first. So I feel like a lot of times, if you're in a rut personally or professionally or romantically, one of the people has to take the plunge and send it, and you can't worry about what the other person is going to do. You just got to just say, like, fuck it, I'm going to do this. We've been, stuck for a while. Doing the same thing is not the answer. So if this doesn't work, at least it's something different that we can talk about. At least it provides a point of conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You want to hear the second thing?
I would like to. How many things is there?
There's 5.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you want to just go through them and then we can figure out if we want to?
All right. So the 5.
So sexting.
5. Sexting. Owning our own pleasure.
What does that mean?
Would you like to find out? These are the 5. Sexting, owning our own pleasure, Viagra, managing stress, communication, and body comfort.
I definitely want to know a little more about some of those.
Which one?
Well, Viagra is pretty, self-explanatory. So the owning your own pleasure, is it what? Like knowing what you like?
So owning our own pleasure, this one is my wife especially has struggled throughout our relationship with feeling like she's not satisfying me enough, not having sex with me enough. I have also worried in the act of sex constantly if I was really pleasing her enough. For us, all that added up to bad and infrequent sex. A few months ago when I had my kids at my parents' house, she set a goal to masturbate for the first time, and it has really liberated her from all that. We've discussed how foreplay isn't so much about making the other partner feel good, but finding ways to get ourselves excited. So separating pleasure from excitement or feeling good. For now, finding ways to give ourselves pleasure is inevitably turning on the other partner anyway. During sex, we've also figured out when it's feeling good to learn to lean more into that and to not worry if that's good for the other, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Now she knows that when she's enjoying it, I'm enjoying it no matter what. And I've learned that vice versa. So that makes sense. I feel like a lot of times for guys, there's so much of an emphasis on what for guys, there's a stereotype of what feels good for a girl, which is just trying to like lay pipe, pound the shit out of her. And you even hear it in the terminology, like when you say, oh yeah, like I piped her last night, or I like laid pipe, or I like fucked the shit out of her. Which should really be only for anal, because that makes more sense than fucking the shit out of her through the vagina.
And also, like, women, like, I think less than 20% of women are capable of having an orgasm through vaginal exclusive penetrations.
And 0% of men can come through their vagina too. So
yeah,
that's the factoid right there.
I think, I mean, it goes back to, I think, historical progression of like the women and especially female pleasure as just kind of come into the conversation recently. And I feel that for like the job of women for the longest time was the support of our husband, whether it is to take care of the kids, to make food, take care of the house, or in marital duties. And now that reciprocal relationship where both parties should be enjoying themselves is definitely recent. And I think some of those things still lash out in the sense that, and I mean, you've told me about this experience. I feel like guys see the, like, providing pleasure for the female, like almost like that chore that they don't want to do. And eventually if they like try and like grow, like they can also grow excited from providing pleasure to the other. And I think it's feminine to female, where maybe the act itself is not the most fulfilling, but providing pleasure to your partner makes it a lot more exciting.
Well, yeah, that was definitely early on. I was just like, oh yeah, like let me go down there, give a few licks, she'll come twice, and then I'll do my thing, and then and I'm just like, yeah, I'm killing it. And
you were so ill informed.
Yeah, every guy early on, every noise that a girl makes is just like,
yeah,
oh, she just came again, like, oh yeah, like, and it's just like you early on in your, sexual awakening, whatever you want to call it, you aren't in tune with the sounds and movement of an orgasm and the sounds and just kind of like the telltale signs of what is pleasure from a woman and what is how to read those signals and be able to lean into that, which you guys also make it hard to women in general, because fake orgasms are such a thing that women are understandably frustrated with guys, because guys generally may not pay as much attention to female pleasure because guys themselves and myself were much more mechanical. We're much more, like we can come when our apartment's burning down. We just have to put it in, out, in, out, in, out, and we'll come eventually.
Yeah.
And so we're used to girls orgasming all the time, and a lot of those are fake orgasms early on. We're getting fake signals with those fake orgasms. So as an 18-year-old guy, you're thinking, oh, I just have to like pound the shit out of it, and then she's gonna finish just like me in 4 minutes. And we asked her if she came, and she said yeah, and then I'm just gonna keep doing my thing. So I think a lot of guys also get false signals early on, and that delays the progression of learning what it's like to please a woman and learning what it's like to feel the ins and outs of another person's pleasure.
I feel like a lot of it comes from poor sex education, where both women or like girls and boys are not well informed on pleasure, and in particular female pleasure. And I definitely realized over time throughout my 20s that I was pulling up with a lot more shit than I should have had. But that's because I was not educated that basically I had rights to my own pleasure and to say no to things I didn't want to do, etc. And I just kind of like let the boat carry me around for a while. And I think it might be the case in a lot of people where we still have this idea where it's more about the male pleasure. And the one thing that we sort of get educating in, and that you might not like as much, is kind of like male fragility when it comes to sex, where it's like, you gotta like brush it the wrong way. You can't, if you're like a guy will feel like shit if it's like, no, I didn't orgasm. But if guys knew how difficult it is for a girl to orgasm, maybe they wouldn't get offended or upset when they didn't, and so women wouldn't lie about it as
okay,
well.
I'll say this. Male fragility definitely exists post-orgasm. After the job is done, after a guy comes,
but that's when they ask.
But he feels good knowing that he also made his partner come after the orgasm. But I don't think there's male fragility. I think male fragility is a myth before or during the act of pleasure. I don't know, and I don't know another guy, and I'm talking for myself as well. Like, guys are very interested and curious about how to please a woman, how to make her come. And so if we're given instructions during the act of sex, almost all guys will welcome that. If you tell a guy straight up, that doesn't feel good, or a little to the left, or can you do this with your tongue, or slower, or don't move, just keep like stay like that. Almost every single guy is going to be open to that, because we are tied so much to, whether it's healthy or not healthy, we are tied so much to the idea that we can make women come. No one wants to be the guy who doesn't make girls come, even though we've all been that guy. So I think if there was more communication during and before the act of sex, that's when guys need it. It's not after. We don't need the fake orgasms. It's not after you didn't make me come, but here's why. I don't think guys would respond to that well.
Sure.
I think it's more before you have sex, or in between, when you're not in a sexual mood, when you're just kind of like talking about things on a podcast, record your own sex podcast and use that to learn about sex. I think that would be the most helpful for guys, because almost all guys are the same in terms of that mechanical aspect. If you rub our dick enough times up and down, we'll come. Every girl is so different with what she likes, what she doesn't like, what to pay attention to, texture, pressure, all this shit. And so it's like we are faced with this mountain that can be climbed 1,000 different ways, and we're just guessing at what the right path is.
But I also think like you might give too much credits to other guys in terms of not being offended. Like, I know maybe it's just miscommunication. Maybe we've both been taught, like both genders have been taught the wrong thing. But I feel that I definitely have issues telling what I like, not because it's weird or anything, but because I feel like I don't want to like hurt someone's feelings. And I also
you wish my penis was smaller. I know. You wish
Yes,
you tell me
alright,
you wish
sure.
my penis.
But you made me lose my track of thought.
You were saying you think I'm giving guys too much credit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of like the fragility that comes with it, I feel like a lot of guys, sure, they want to make girl calm, but like how much are they willing to be told what they're doing wrong to improve versus they want to kind of like figure it out themselves. Like they don't want to read the manual. They just want to be like, I'm a great mechanic.
I disagree. I think if every pussy came with a manual, guys would read it before they went down there, before they got the job.
Having slept with more men than you have, I think
for now.
I will disagree again. But yeah, for now. But again, you know, maybe that's my experience with early 20s. And like you said, when you were in your early 20s, you were also a pretentious douche that didn't want to do the work and just thought that girls would magically come. But then there's another thing that I think impact fake orgasms is, in a way, later on consent, let's say, where I think a lot of women might not feel that they can say when they don't want to have sex anymore. And that's something that I have done, where I fake an orgasm to induce the male orgasm or make the guy stop because I don't want to have sex anymore and I don't feel like I can say that I'm not enjoying this anymore and I want it to stop.
So you have used an orgasm almost like the friend who calls you during a bad date that says, hey, this is me calling you, and you can pretend that your apartment's burning down or something. So your orgasm, you've used that like that in the past, where you have it as this card in your back pocket, in your back pussy, to pull out at the right time if you decide you no longer want to do this interaction.
Yeah, I guess.
All right, that makes sense. I still do think that most guys would be open to a manual. If they were okay, imagine
with the person that they're
imagine.
dating, maybe, but like not with like. I think you are a gentleman when it comes to female pleasure. I don't think that, and I mean, it's different when you're dating someone, when you're with your partner for a long time, because then I think the communication has to open up eventually. Otherwise, you're just gonna have like terrible sex and then more problems later on. But when you're having like a one night stand or just like a small thing, you're not gonna like read the freaking manual for a one or a couple night thing.
Yes, most guys would.
That is not true.
Okay, imagine this. Imagine you don't have to imagine because we did match on Hinge. We match on Hinge, and then 3 dates in, let's say 3 dates or something like that, was the first time we had sex. You have the option, the Hinge app sends you a message and it's a notification and it says, this is this person's sex manual, her pussy manual, or whatever we want to call it. You write your own personal pussy manual on Hinge of the directions of what gets you off, how you like it, what your favorite position is, all the spots that you like. And as a guy, you can either swipe right and open that notification, or you can delete it from your phone. I think 99% of guys would say, I'm reading this before the 4th date when we're going to have sex.
That's
so
different.
I know.
But
it's a manual.
No, but like
I'm
you've
saying
gone
most guys want to know.
You have gone on several dates. You are invested. You're already forming a relationship with that person. It's not just a random hookup.
I think the same thing applies to one night stand. I
disagree.
I think if there's a one night stand and I had the option, same thing. Hinge sends me.
But you're a unicorn, dude.
Hinge says, I see, location, like we see you're back at your apartment with Julie. Would you like her pussy manual? I would say like, fuck yeah, let me just skim this in the bathroom for 5 minutes before I go in there.
But
I think 99% of guys would take that.
I absolutely disagree. I think you are lucky to be surrounded by a group of gentlemen. Your friends are all very nice. But like, I can tell you that there's a lot more douchebags out there, and they do not care about that.
Well, then we'll agree to disagree. I think when 99.9% of guys, if they are given the personal key to the kingdom of this is what I need to get me off, this is what I don't like, these are the moves I like. And granted, you still have to learn each other's bodies too. You can't write all of that in a manual. Maybe if you did a video tutorial. But I think I'm not in the minority of guys. I appreciate you calling me a gentleman, but I think that in that case, 99.9% of guys, if given the option of, would you like the key to unlock this girl's pleasure, they would all say yes, because you want to do a good job. It's like you want to. Guys don't care as much about doing it on their own as girls think. I think guys just care about getting the job done. Okay. Obviously, you want to come and get your own and have a good time for yourself, which is also part of sex. You should be selfish with aspects of sex where you want to feel fulfilled. But I don't think guys really care how the job gets done if it gets done.
Fair enough. It might also be cultural differences. And again, I feel like for me, there's really been a distinction whether I was sleeping with guys before the age of 25 or even a little after that or closer to 30 and beyond. I definitely felt that the group of people that you're describing were definitely there past 25, 26. But early 20s guys, and that might be just from a lack of experience and not from actual lack of interest in learning. But I feel like I've definitely experienced more carelessness, let's say, about female pleasure and concern about how the relationship was going, consent on certain things and stuff.
Well, I think that boils down to experience, like
and education,
said.
Sure.
If you're doing a job, the less repetitions you have at the job, the worse you're going to do. So by default, you're going to have less repetitions in your early 20s than you will in your early 30s. Yeah. So if you're paying attention and you're learning and you want to do a better job, you will be better at that job, which is in this case sex. The longer you go on, or the longer you spend with one person, because rarely is the first time you hook up with someone the best time.
No, absolutely. And I also think that one of the issues that, for instance, I had and why I had so much, let's say, bad sex, even though I didn't think it was bad at the time, but looking back on it, was because I was not educated on what I could say or I could do, that consent was applicable at every minute before, during, and after sex, and that I was able to leave or stop if I didn't feel comfortable anymore. If the sex is unpleasant, it's okay to say, this is unpleasant, I want to stop, or let's do something else. And so I think that maybe if girls were also taught that it is okay to not want to have sex anymore. It's okay to not want to do this thing, to say that it hurts, to say that you're not feeling excited, or just like go there and like feel comfortable being able to communicate with the guys or what they like it or not. Then guys would also do better, because if 20-year-old something, if nobody tells them that what they're doing is unpleasant, they're not going to know, and they're going to just keep doing it.
Yeah. With that, I would agree. I think communication is always better.
Communication and education.
Comeducation. Let's get into the good place.
All right. You don't have a smooth transition for that one.
Well, let's get into the good place, and then I'll get into your good place.
Oh, ew.
After we've talked about getting into your good place, now we're going to get into the good place, and I'm going to get into the good place.
All right.
Let's get into the good place.
Let's do it.
All right, let's go. So I was on the Good Place Reddit.
Yeah.
Which has 200,000 people. I expected it to have probably 20 or 30,000. I guess the show is way more popular than I thought. It's on Netflix, which obviously a lot of people are watching.
Well, there's a lot of shows on Netflix that don't do well.
But I was like, I didn't think it was.
It was big when it came out. Like, I mean,
I just missed it, I guess.
Yeah, like that's the thing is now we're watching it, but like season 4 came out a few years ago. But yeah, it definitely was very noticeable.
So one of the concerns or ideas brought up on Reddit is, does The Good Place show that capitalism is the source of all our problems? And there's this image which I'll pass you in a second, and it shows the Good Place. Maybe I'll throw this up on the YouTube if you're watching it, but if you're just listening to this, it's a picture of The Good Place, and it has this kind of scale on the bottom, percentage scale on the bottom, and so it says The Good Place, 30%, oh cool, a show about the afterlife, 10%, what, oh my god, and then 60%, capitalism is the cause of all our problems, it stops us from growing as people, and only when we don't have these responsibilities we can become better by helping ourselves. So again, it's like The Good Place, it's saying it's a little bit, oh cool, show about the afterlife, a little bit, what, oh my god, and then mostly The Good Place is showing us about the downfalls and the pitfalls of capitalism.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on The Good Place exposing capitalism?
So for your listeners as well, we're like halfway through season 4 for you, so didn't finish it completely. And so I think this last season really goes more into that idea of capitalism. And that's something that we started seeing with their point system being flawed because there's just too many consequences that like you can't just go buy to the grocery store. Like you can't buy a tomato to make a salad for your old aunt or something, which would be a good action because these tomatoes are produced in a way that affects climate change and were picked out by underpaid, let's say, Mexican employees. And there's just like so much that goes on. So like that simple action of buying a tomato yields terrible consequences and end up being negative points, even though originally you had good intentions to make a salad for your poor old aunt. But so I definitely think that there's a lot of capitalism in that, and they're definitely shedding a light on all the consequences that our society has and how complicated our world has become. But I also think that this is more like what season 4 is kind of like unveiling. Well, like season 1, 2, 3 was a lot more, oh, cool, yeah, afterlife, and it's a fun show. And now they're kind of like still in a very fun and light way, uncovering some of that.
I think that The Good Place contradicts themselves with capitalism and may even expose themselves a little bit as a show with the way that they approach the idea.
Yeah.
So they begin to introduce the idea in season 4 that it is nearly impossible to make a good decision. Like you were saying, if you buy a tomato, it's being produced by people who are not getting paid a lot or maybe not even paid at all. There's sketchy things that happen in the production process. Workers aren't treated fairly. You think you're just buying a tomato and you're giving money towards supporting all these different systems and inequities in our society. With that, The Good Place exists only because of a loophole named Janet, which they get around all of the things being available in The Good Place because Janet can snap her fingers and create things out of nowhere. So it's like they get around they point out the flaws of capitalism without actually addressing them in The Good Place by having a being that can just snap her fingers and it appears. Whereas maybe if Janet wasn't in The Good Place, maybe they would make people in the bad place slaves and say, this is your punishment because you're worse than us.
That is the case already.
Maybe.
We don't know. But like, it's like between flattening penises, they're like, now you're going to make some apples.
And maybe they're like, people in the bad place are less than us. We'll make them slaves and have people build everything in the good place, which throughout history, many great things have been built on the back of slaves. And if you're building great things in the good place, why not punish people in the bad place to have them do that? So it's like, yes, they're trying to undermine capitalism and say how flawed this world is, but at the same time, the place that exists that is supposed to be good and that they're learning to be friends with, they're learning to be friends with each other and also get along with the place that they're in as well. That only exists because no one has to make anything, or they don't have to deal with any realities. No one has to build a house. No one has to cut the grass.
Nobody has to pay rent.
No one has to pay rent. So of course, I think our world would be a lot more like the good place if I could just snap my fingers and build a house next to this apartment or have a Tesla outside. And so it's like, yes, I get what they're saying about capitalism, that the world has become so complicated and interconnected. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that's more a result of technology innovating and more lines crossing and everything, and more communication, that more people are affected by a single decision. I don't think it's I don't think it's as horrible as they depict in the show, making single decisions, like buying something from the grocery store. But at the same time, the only reason why the good place exists is because no one has to do anything. So
that's true.
Sure, the world could exist like that if everyone had a Janet, but it doesn't, and shit needs to get done. People have to make decisions. People have to build things. We want to make a profit, which means people go overseas to build everything, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think that's causing a lot of supply chain problems now in the US, is because we outsource everything to China and we don't actually build anything ourselves. So in a global pandemic, we've realized how fragile our economy actually is. So yeah, I think they go at capitalism, but they sort of undermine themselves with the idea of saying like, we got you, capitalism. But then the whole show is just Janet making things.
Yes, it's definitely like they're not offering any solution here because they just have a Janet. On the other hand, I would say that the world is definitely complicated with the advances of technologies, and there's definitely things that we can do to make it better. And there are people fighting for workers' rights. There are people that are fighting against climate change. And so there are ways to make those endpoints less complicated. There is ways for us to improve the state of our world so that buying a tomato doesn't involve like a chain reaction of terrible things behind it. I do agree that there is some amount of contradiction in their point system as well. Like, for instance, to earn positive points, you need to do positive action with the intent of doing something good. You should not do it with the intent of being rewarded for something. But on the other hand, a negative action doesn't have the same effect. So it should be the same thing. So like if you buy a tomato knowing that this tomato is not fair trade, that it came from underpaid workers, poorly treated workers, and you still buy that tomato, then maybe you get the negative points. But if you're well-intentioned, shouldn't you not be paying off the same debt? You know what I'm saying? So I feel like there's a contradiction there as well, where it's like extremely hard to get positive points because you need to be well-intentioned and do something well. Well, you basically lose point in every other occasion as well.
Do you think you should still lose points with a well-intentioned bad choice?
Well, it depends. That's what I mean is that, well, everything, it's like it's a whole debate thing. And that's something that in science we ask ourselves constantly, especially when you do like animal studies. It's like, and that's something that I've struggled with throughout my entire scientific career. And I've gotten to the point where I don't ever want to do animal experiments again, I do understand how valuable they are and that these are needed for us to find cures to the world's worst afflictions. But at the same time, you are sacrificing the lives of animals for that. But some people will say it's for the greater good. So you do something wrong to make a greater change. And there's so many examples of that. This is only one. But then I feel that if you are really completely aware of the flaws of, let's say, a company, and it's like when I told you about this shop, I was going to buy an outfit out and then I read about it and there were just so many things that I found that were wrong with this shop that then the question was, can I disregard all those bad things about it and still get the clothes, or do I choose not to get them and in that way, like, make a better action? So I think there is a difference whether you choose to ignore things to get something that's good for you, or you're willing to make the sacrifice because it's overly bad.
Yeah. Well, I do think we need a capitalism 2.0. Capitalism has brought a lot of great things.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to afford talking on this mic with this recorder and a camera and living in this apartment for the price that I am without capitalism being a thing. And so, yes, it has brought great benefit. It also is makes profit the main motivation for everyone who participates in it, because profit is king. And if you can make $1, then you can have more control.
Yeah.
And so I do think we need a capitalism 2.0, and I'm not smart enough to figure out how to do that, but it needs to focus less on profit and more for the long-term physical, emotional, and mental benefit of human beings.
Absolutely.
Without being communism.
Yes.
Without distributing everything equally. I don't believe in equal distribution, but I do believe in a fair system that allows you to express yourself and receive rewards based on the good work that you put in, that also takes into account other things besides profit. And I also, I do like the way that the Good Place de-emphasizes work, because by default, if you're in the Good Place, you no longer work on anything other than what you want to, like Chidi with teaching class, which you would normally getting paid for, but he does it because he likes to. People that, if they want to sew or fly or whatever they want to do, you do it because you enjoy it and you get to work when you want. And I'm not with the whole kind of anti-work movement of today where people are just leaving, like advocating for leaving the workforce completely. I think while people are alive, you should have some sort of work to give you purpose. But
it's a very privileged thing, for us, that we were able to kind of choose a job that we like and that we can afford doing, even though it might not be the giving back the most. Like, I feel that.
Sure. I wanted to finish the point. Yeah. And I'm very lucky and privileged to be able to do a job that I enjoy. There's a contradiction in our society where we say that we value kindness and treating others well, and then we also value being burnt out. Being burnt out is like a status symbol. When someone's like, like I'm so tired, like I worked my ass off this week.
Yeah.
People give them social points for that. It's like good person, good person, good person, good person.
Yeah.
Like, why the fuck would you want to work 80 hours in a week and break yourself down and not sleep? And there's no way you can treat someone with kindness if you are being burnt out. Burnt out and kindness don't mix. You can't value one as a society and not value another. So I'm not anti-work at all. I think that people should be working to have a purpose. Not that you can't
pro-balanced work.
Not that you can't take breaks from work. But I am for readjusting the work week stereotype that has been around since the early 20th century of the clock in, clock out, 9 to 5. Now it's like 8 to 6, 7 to 7. I am strongly with making the idea of work more and more flexible to fit into living a fulfilling life rather than trying to fit this outdated archetype of factory systems.
Yeah.
Because people will be kinder if they can work how they want and also do just as well or better of a job than they were doing before. I think I'm doing better working remotely because I am more flexible with the hours that I'm working, and I don't have to put up with a lot of the office bullshit that normally would take up time during the day. And I feel like more of an autonomous being on my own, being able to work how I want, when I want, as long as I am doing a good job and getting done what I need to do.
No, absolutely. I hate that culture that I think it's a very millennial thing. From what I've been reading, that culture of being overworked, that the only way to achieve success is to just run yourself into work and basically pass by life, having like just worked yourself to death. And I've definitely experienced that, where I feel shame and guilt if I don't feel like I've worked like 10 hours a day, and I feel pride when I have worked for 15 hours and I've not slept for more than like 6 hours in weeks. So I think this is wrong, and that definitely correlates with the rise in mental health illnesses because our brains need to take a break. And I also think that there need to be a redistribution of wealth, maybe in that capitalism 2.0. There is no way that there is one person that holds enough money to literally solve world hunger and poverty. And one person, it's not even his whole fortune. Like, I think some people have posted that like 10% of the fortune of Elon Musk could still be like $1 billion per citizen in the world, or things like that.
In his defense, space is cool as fuck.
Well, I'm not criticizing Elon Musk. I'm criticizing how society works, that one person could get that much money when we have so many people that are dying of hunger and poverty every day. That is nuts. And it's like true for like a lot of celebrities and stuff. And I'm not blaming them to be like, you should donate all of your money to the world. I think it's society's job to implement things so that indeed, like, the amount of taxation is is proportional to how much you make, which is true for any person in the working class. And somehow, once you reach the threshold, you're like exempted from that. And this money can then be redistributed to form program and help people that need support and education and whatnot to actually reach higher level in society. Like you said, having a more human-based approach rather than just money. The more money you make, yeah.
Well, nothing works again. Nothing will work. No system will work if it goes against human incentives. And humans are selfish. I'm selfish. You have selfish concerns. We're both selfish beings. We have, and that's not a bad thing. And people want to do what's good for them and what will benefit them in the short and long term for people who are smart. Not a lot of people think long term, but the people who do separate themselves. And if we are going to shift the way that money is distributed and the way wealth is distributed, and to lower the class divide, because that's also, I think, a lot of the culture wars, a lot of the names that are thrown around, like racism or misogyny or transphobia, yes, those exist, but a lot of that is kind of thrown around to blind us from the class divide, like the wealth class divide. Sagar and Jetty on Breaking Points put up an Instagram post about it. I think it was a story the other day, and I reposted it, about how a lot of the culture war is to distract us from the class war. And I think that's true, that a lot of the shit is thrown around to distract us from how wealthy people are getting and how poor people are getting. And if we're gonna make that divide less, you have to give people an incentive to give away their money and change the social reward system to incentivize someone to want to be someone
Yeah.
who would do that. I think right now there's too much benefit to being rich as fuck and separating yourself from society to become untouchable and doing whatever you want, that if you were seen as very cool, or if you got something for being someone who donated 20% of your net worth to education systems, or to building some sort of software that would be free for people to use, if there was some sort of tangible gain for that, not just people knowing that you did it, but there would actually be some sort of social reward system for you doing good things, people would be incentivized to change. And without that, we're just hoping that people will change and then punishing them for doing things to take advantage of the system. Like when people when people talk shit about billionaires for not paying taxes, our system legally allows them to set themselves up to not pay taxes. And I was reading about this the other day. Once you say you have $1 billion, you can take out a loan against your investment assets. If you have $1 billion, you probably have, let's say you have 500 million of that invested in stocks and property. You can take a loan against the assets, the investment assets that you own. You take out a loan against that, and then you use that as your spending money, and then you pay off the loan as your assets are growing. So you never have to tap into you never have to realize a gain through spending your investments. You let your investments grow. You take out loans. You use that for cash when you need it. And as your investments are growing, you just keep taking out loans. You spend it, take out loans, and the amount that you can take out gets more and more as your assets grow. So right now you don't have to pay taxes on that. And to be honest, if I was a billionaire, I would be dumb if I wouldn't use that loophole.
Of course. This is why it's a problem with the system. And there's the fact that, like, the more money you get, the more incentive you also have to kind of stay at that level. And so I think that's also one of the reasons why, like, politicians, like, more at the bottom that might not make as much money might have the more the incentives of the community that they are in. Because, like, if there's a community that's, like, mostly poor, they don't make that much money, they have the incentive to, like, improve the life in their community. But as you go up the ladder as well, your incentive and motivation might change, because you do get into those groups of, like, richer people and how to preserve your own wealth. And so I think part of the problem is that people that are in power, because they are driven by the wealth incentive rather than the human incentive, kind of keep that system stuck in that. And truly, like, it doesn't take that much to counter the balance. Like, you've got, like, education, building programs that, like, rehabilitate people and help them kind of, like, get on their back. Because if you really, like, when you talked about racism, sexism, I don't want to, like, diminish the experience of transgender people of color, or other women that are in the wealthy top band. But it is a lot harder to be all those things when you're poor. You are going to be having more problem with law enforcement, and
a lot harder to be racist if you're
a lot harder to be a person of color, a woman, or transgender if you're poor than if you're rich.
I mean, transgender I could see, because you can't afford hormones or surgery. But if I was a poor white guy from Appalachia, or a poor black guy from the hood in Atlanta.
Well, I was going to say, you're still, like, a white guy, so that's also different. You'd just be poor.
I don't think it actually would help me that much to be in the same living conditions. If you have two people that everything's the same, the apartment's the same, the income is the same, the lifestyle is the same, your parents, your upbringing is the same, your community is the same. If you swap out white or black, I don't actually think it makes that big of a difference on your life.
Then you're
I'm
wrong.
not saying you don't get treated differently in certain situations, like with police officers or with other people. But again, you would be going to the same school if you were white or black.
But that's the thing, is like in your case, yes, you're, like, saying same district, etc. But, like, there has been recurrent proof that, like, Black people have been kept in certain neighborhoods that don't get access to the best schools. And like, it's kind of like this vicious loop where they are like segregated and kind of like get stuck in this vicious loop, and it's really hard to get out of it.
I'm not saying that keeping Black people out of certain districts. Wait, let me finish. I'm not saying
Well, you interrupted me first, so.
I want to make the point that I'm not saying that redlining isn't a thing and that Black people aren't kept out of certain districts and that haven't been segregated from neighborhoods and kept from going to certain establishments that are more white. I'm not saying that's not a thing, that has been a thing and still is a thing today. I'm saying if you have two people that are in the same exact situation, live the same area, go to the same school, have the same family, parents have the same income, I don't think your situation changes that much if you swap out Black for white. I'm responding to what you said when you said it's harder to go through hardship when you're Black versus white. I think if you're in a situation already, that being a certain skin color won't really change your situation all that much. I think there are a lot of things that go into the history of being Black or the history of being white that you have momentum on your side more if you're white, and you don't really have momentum on your side as much if you're Black. But if you're just zeroing in on this specific person, I don't really think it makes that much of a difference.
How about this? Like, I'll put it like this, that when you're in a situation of poverty, you are more likely to act out and maybe commit crimes because you did not get access to education. You did not, like, you struggled to get a job. Maybe you committed a few crimes in your when you were a teenager, so now you can't get a job. And you can't, like, by living under the poverty line, you are set off to just kind of like struggle to ever get out of it. It's like,
sure.
And so the idea is that wealthy people work very hard to keep those lines separated. They don't want the gap between the low working class and impoverished people and the wealthiest people to get closer because they get so much advantage over that. And it's like what you said before, if the incentive would change, it wouldn't be as focused on money. We would actually maybe have elected politicians that, and like fossil fuel industries, etc., we probably would already have more of a change regarding like climate change, because it's been very clear that this is like a human crisis. The planet will be fine. It's like about us. This is a human crisis. But they are still thinking, yeah, but we're making profit. It's like, well, if we don't do anything, your children will be dead as well. Like, this concerns us all, regardless of whether we're rich or poor, even though the poorest countries are most affected right now. So point being that I agree that we need to stop making money centered.
I think we actually fell victim to a little bit in that part of the discussion. I think we actually fell victim to talking about race over the main issue, which is class. Because if, say, I'm white and you're Black, and I say, oh yeah, my life is hard because I'm poor, and then you say, well, you think your life is hard? Like, I'm poor too, and I also have it worse because I'm Black. Now you have Black people and white people arguing who has it worse when you're both poor as fuck. And then rich people are just watching you dance and argue with each other. And that's how racism becomes a smokescreen for the actual issue, which is that you're both poor as fuck and your life isn't all that different, but you're arguing about these little tiny differences to try to like claw your way up the social ladder, when who gives a shit if you're like 0.2% ahead of the other poor person. Like, your goal is you want to make more money, and everyone wants to become wealthy and do what they want to do and be able to express themselves. So I think right there, that, and even myself, like getting caught up in the race discussion sometimes, when it's taking a step back and looking at the situation, going like, we're both pretty much the same. Our issue is not, in this particular situation, the issue may not be race or sexuality or any sort of characteristic discrimination, but more that there are corporations and people in power that are treating us like shit And I'm saying treating us like shit. Like I have a great life. I'm fortunate enough to grow up in a house with a mom who started a business that did very well, and so I am a product of that financial success of my mom and my parents. So I'm not saying like us. Like I'm not putting myself in that category of people who have struggled financially growing up. But I'm saying like us as like the people who aren't in that super wealthy like top 0.1%, whatever you want to make it. I feel like wealthy, like the super wealthy people almost laugh at the race discussions because they're like, all right, good. As long as they're not talking about the fact that everyone is below us in wealth, as long as they're focused on other issues like race or sexism or the different phobias, like as long as they're not talking about money, we don't give a shit. But as soon as they start to come after, like maybe people should be closer together, maybe we should start to close the wealth gap, that's when the wealthy people step in and say like, let's stir the pot a little bit, let's get them riled up, let's make them protest more, because if they're protesting, they're not actually coming after us.
You know what we do in my country when this happens?
You drink.
No, I mean
wine. You cheese.
No, I was making an analogy to the French Revolution, because the French got really poor.
Guillotine people.
And we guillotined them.
Guillotine the wealthy. That is the title of this podcast.
We were like, listen, the queen and the king are super wealthy and the rest of her are like starving. So let's chop their heads off.
Hashtag guillotine billionaires. You heard it from Julie LeBeau on the AUXORO podcast. We'll sign for that. We'll start up a hashtag. I think that is a good place to end off. Of course, we're kidding, but no, I mean that is a good point that people
that we should shove their head off.
That is a good point. I want to see heads rolling down Park Avenue in New York. But like people will reach a point where they will no longer take that shit anymore.
I think we're getting there.
It's in the top 1%'s best interest to work with the lower middle class.
Yeah.
Because if not, people will come for you, and the divide, the greater the divide gets for the wealthy and the lower class, the less time the wealthy have to stay on top, because in the past, in history, when that divide has gotten too big, that's when the society starts to collapse.
Well, I was gonna say, like, that's something that I also heard recently, and I was kind of like from the results of COP26. You know, COP. Yeah, that's Conference of the Parties. That's when all the heads of, like, I can't remember, like, I think 120 countries met in Glasgow this past couple of weeks to kind of discuss climate change and like solutions that should be implemented and stuff. And again, it was like mostly disappointing and not urgent enough. And someone raised the point that any big change in society has never come from the top down, but from the down up, when the people were like fed up with all that shit. And I think that, at least regarding, you know, to climate and people not doing anything, things not changing, fossil fuel industry keeping on putting tons in their pocket, people are getting like really fed up. And I think we are starting to reach a boiling point where, people are just going to be like, this, you got to like do something now, because we're like,
bring out the guillotines.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully without the guillotines, but I can tell that, like, I feel like these past few years, whether it's been with racism, climate change, and other issues, and like you said, like, you know, maybe in some way they all kind of also fall under the umbrella of that wealth gap, and I think that people like are starting to like really get pissed about a lot of those things and not being okay with it. And I think it's great that we're talking about it a lot more openly. And I can't wait to see some heads being chopped off.
Yeah, that's something that I regret is not being able to go on a date to see a beheading in the town square, because that's what people did back in the day. Yeah. You know, they would meet each other at the local pub. They would ask, you know, what's going on this weekend, and someone would say, "Oh,
Jean-Pierre." That women were not allowed to drink. So they wouldn't meet women at the pub.
Well, you'd watch me drink then, and then we'd get in conversation, and then we'd say, oh, what's going on? And you say, oh, I heard Jean-Pierre is getting his head chopped off Saturday at noon. We should go check that out. And it was a whole thing. You bring these triangle sandwiches, eat them, bring a basket, and then if you were lucky, the girl who catches the head is the next one to get married.
That's where it comes from.
That's where it comes from. Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
But yeah, no, I think a lot of people, especially with the pandemic and people who have not been working and still able to get the stimulus money and get unemployment, or having time to think because so many people have not been working, eventually you sit around and you start to think, why am I doing what I used to do? Why was I doing what I did every day? Why was I going to work in a factory, or why was I going to work at this place for 60 hours a week, getting paid $11 an hour? And what are these wealthy people doing to keep me in this position, or what are they doing to make it very hard for me to move up? And so we're in a place now where a lot of people who aren't working, that are very smart, that I don't think a lot of wealthy people think are smart. I think a lot of wealthy people think that lower middle class people are dumb when they have some of the most exciting and interesting takes about things going on in the economy, because they're living with it every day and they're doing it every day. I think a lot of those people, lower middle class, have taken a step back and have started to think about why the fuck is the world and the US in particular running like this, and who is responsible for running like this, and people are starting to do things about it.
Yeah.
So something you can do to feed into the capitalist machine is subscribe to AUXORO Premium at auxoro.supercast.com. It's less than $5 a month for 3+ hours of bonus episodes every month. This is public, so you can click the link to get the bonus episodes. It'll be we've talked about topics like ayahuasca, COVID lab leak theory, the rise of Tim Dillon, Tom Cruise. We're doing one on the Dark Knight soon, so a wide range of topics. Then there's also bonus solo episodes every month, less than $5 a month when you sign up for the year. And feed the capitalist machine. Give me your money, and I will give you good content. I give you my word, and if I don't give you good content, you can come for me with the guillotine and chop my head off. If I put out more than 2 bad episodes in a row, you can show up my apartment with the guillotine, and I will lay my neck on the blade, and you can do the business.
Well, actually, the blade is on top, so you lay your head on a wooden bit.
Isn't there a thing on? There's not a blade on the bottom. I thought it was a double blade.
No.
So
well,
it's like easy.
No. You've got like a wooden thing. Kind of like when you were. Like the old handcuffs with the head as well. So you've got like a wooden bit where you put your head on it, and then the metal knife
goes down. Okay.
Just kind of like falls down.
So we'll do a double blade. You can behead me first with a lower blade. That'll go halfway through, and then you can pull the string and have the top one go down too. Yes, my head will roll, and hopefully you'll catch it, and then you'll get married to the next guy that you see, and you can get my head whatever
put it
taxidermied. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Smiling like this.
Ew. You can't move your tongue if you're dead. Oh my god.
Bye guys.